Maybe that's why I had that dream when I was 10 years old. And I was taken to I was in this place, and there were two lines of people, on the right and on the left. On the left were people who, obviously, they had a hard time, hard life. They did. And they were coming in every single second they were coming in. On the right side, these people had suits on, right? They had these little things in their hands where they were working with these little pins, right? And I saw that when I was tiny, drawing a picture of a cell phone, little tablets, TVs. I remember telling my parents, I said, one day when I'm older, they'll have a TV that'll be real, I call it a TV, that'll be real small, and it'll be a perfect reproduction of three-dimensional images, and all imagery, it'll be perfect. And people will work directly on that screen. They'll carry it in their hand, it'll be flat and everything. That's when I was tiny, when I was young. I saw that. And these people lined up, the people on the right, who were all in their tablets and stuff like that, their PDAs, they were probably, connecting. They thought they were doing business. It looked like these people were dressed to impress, to do business. Most of them had dark clothing on, the business attire. They didn't even realize they had gone. And this voice came to me, followed by a presence. And it told me to move, right? I was to move in this little place. Because all those people on the right were to be taken in front of this door. Now, this door it didn't look bad or anything. It was a door. And it was an angel that told me to move. He held everybody back, right? Because he was about to open the door. Well, that couldn't have been good. Now, I'm a 10-year-old boy looking at this stuff. And when he opened the door, right, those people got sucked in to I could feel that blackness. That blackness was an emptiness. And they got sucked. Nobody threw them in there. They got sucked in there into a nothingness behind this door. It was so black that there's no way anybody could ever reproduce anything that dark. And they got sucked into it. Nobody threw them in. They were drawn into it by something, obviously something that was in them, was in there. And they got sucked in there. And when the door shut, a whole nother group was about to come in, and I saw a big table. A big table. And from time to time, you see a head pop up at the table, and people were praying. But it was only, at first, it was a lot, but then it was only like maybe one every 2 seconds. Then one every 20 seconds. Two here, then one. And I was like, what is this table? And he said, these are they who pray on earth. They show up at this huge table praying. That was something. And then, as I was wandering around looking at stuff, being amazed, there was a door I could not go through. Because I saw people, the people that were on the left, they were going through a door. And I wanted so badly to follow, and I could not. I couldn't go in there. They told me why. But then I started thinking about the world, right? And so I went back to this world. I was back here in this time, but not this time, but in this world. But the sun was different, because I wanted to know what happened to everybody on earth. The sun was different. The grass was different. There were hardly anybody was driving. The sun was bright. The leaves on the trees were brown and falling off. There was people were in this dream, and I could see what they were doing. And people were doing drugs because there were no children on the earth. And they were doing drugs to escape the emptiness of the day. And I heard this one woman, she was blaming everybody for what happened to her. Everybody. And I remember thinking, that's not why you're here. I remember so strongly knowing exactly why people were here. In the words, here's what I said. I said, this holds no bearing on why you're here. Please, I wanted this person not to do that. Not to cry, not to blame, not to do all that. Because it had nothing to do with why they were there. But they kept blaming. And the only way they could escape the anguish of nothingness on the earth at that time, because there were no children, hardly no traffic. You didn't hear animals. I didn't see any birds. It was just a bright sun shining on this parched grass. The trees had leaves that were burnt. They looked like they were half burnt. It was the middle of summer. And people were going into these little places, and it looked like in these places, right, they didn't want to burn electricity in the daytime. They had electricity. They did. Nobody wanted to burn it. I think because it was too hot. It was too hot to turn a light bulb on. And so people actually put sheets and stuff with their curtains so that the light from the sun would not be so intense, frying their homes from the inside out. That's what I'm thinking now. I'm just guesstimating that. But I think that's what it was. But they would go and do drugs, and they were doing anything to get drugs to numb their minds. They were stuck here in this world with no children, no anything, and obviously a great transition took place. Then it came back. You know, that's that same scene I just shared with you has been in my dreams 24 times. It's been a component in dreams 24 times. 24 times. And when I got older, I ended up meeting the people in that dream that I saw. I know exactly who they are. So that was not a hogwash dream. And so every day of my life, right, every time the sun has been changing. I knew it's been changing. And every summer, it looks different. It looks more and more hazy, just like that dream. And all sorts of drugs are out there that do exactly what these people were doing, because they were not smoking anything. They were doing other stuff, right? And people are becoming just like they were in that dream. What I don't understand is what happened to all the children. They were gone. That was almost like a dream sequence I had 24 times where it looked like the pages were flipping. There was even a time I saw a bunch of newspapers, right, with headlines, and then all of a sudden the headlines disappeared and everybody was looking at tablets. The same dream I had 24 times, I mailed out to some folks and put one in the safety deposit box. They're postmarked and people have them. Don't ask me why I did that, but I did that. It's a foolproof way that somebody would have something just in case everything comes to pass. Only one person actually, no, take that back. A couple of people opened it. They couldn't help themselves, and they can't believe the contents of it. But I can't either. So don't look at me like somehow I'm special. I just believe the Lord gave that to me because he knew I'd be doing this, the very thing I swore I would not do. I swore I would not do what I'm doing now, talking to people. So much for my good word. And that was only one little piece out of this dream. But in that dream sequence, when things happen, I call them a marker. Markers happen, right? For example, in a part of this dream, somebody here at COT, but there's a person here at COT that I know very well, and their children because of that dream. But listen to me. There was a time when I saw orcas or some kind of fish. They were vertically sleeping in the water, and they showed them near the ruins of an underwater city. It was a documentary playing on TV, and I saw it. In the middle of that, there were fish under the underpasses on the roads. I was on some sort of a coastal place, and fish were all over the place. They were under the overpasses and underpasses. There were fish there. So obviously floods had kept happening. Fish under the underpasses. Before we started having all these floods, I told about this stream, and now it's common to have fish under the underpasses. Isn't that funny? Anyway, after the fish, the clouds changed, and everybody would go out when they got off work to take pictures of how beautiful the clouds were. And that was the warning. The beauty of the clouds was the warning. The colors of the clouds were the warning. For some reason, after work around 4 to 6 p.m., everybody started taking pictures of the sunsets. Everybody did. It's almost like everybody had a camera, and everybody would come out to start taking pictures. Here's the funny part. I've been seeing that more and more and more and more. And before we had Facebook or anything else, right, that would seem somewhat ludicrous. But now, it's almost like a hobby. And that's exactly what people are doing. And they didn't know it was a warning. They didn't know it was a warning. Because right after that, and right after that documentary, People started doubling up in their houses because something had happened where people, there were just, for example, say you had 2 people in a home, right? Well, during this time, you had 3, 4 people in a home. People were coming back to stay with other people previously, right? So like your brother may come back and say, hey, can I stay with you guys for, this amount of time? Or your sister may come back, or somebody may come back to stay with you. That was happening all over the place. And then it happened. Right after that, it happened. I was out on the beach. I was looking out at the water. And on the water, I saw a brown cloud, right? I thought it was like a dirty rain cloud or something like that. As I got closer, I noticed people screaming. Then it got closer, and it was hot. It was coming off the ocean. It was like ash, dust, hot, burning dust. And it was coming at, and I remember going inside to shield the 2 kids so they would not feel the heat. That's what I remember, Lord, don't let them feel this heat. Don't let them. And so I shielded them so I would feel it first, hoping they would just go fast, right? Something happened, and it began in the oceans. And it came from the oceans and hit the land masses. First, with this hot dirt. See, I thought it was a storm at first. I thought it was a tsunami. Second, I thought it was a wall of water, but then it just kept coming, and it was burning things up as it went. It was very hot, burning things up, and it was consuming everything. What came before that? People taking pictures of the skies. The colors were beautiful. It was the colors people were displaying. They kept taking pictures of those colors. Number 2, this documentary where the fish were vertical. They were orcas or dolphins or something. They were sleeping vertical near the ruins of some underwater city. Had about 7 columns, and the orcas were sleeping vertical in the documentary, right? And I saw that. It was like in a documentary, commercial, something, but they were vertical. First time I ever saw anybody show anything on TV of these orcas vertical in this dream, right? Right after that, it unfolded. And do you know what? So the fish were under the underpasses. That was one of the first signs, I guess you could say, the fish. Then, of course, the clouds. And people thought it was beautiful. And I knew in that dream it was a warning. A warning. A real warning. No one paid attention. They were just taking pictures of the sky. And then it happened. Something either erupted in the ocean in a pyroclastic flow, hit many different coastlines, or something fell into the oceans, causing the exact same thing. Either way, that was a hot cloud that overtook things. In a portion of the same dream, last one I'll tell you, then I'll get back to the thing, but in a portion of the same dream, I was in the place I'm at now, looking through a bay window. And when I looked outside, I saw black smoke with cinders in the smoke blowing from it. It was left to right in the dream. So where I'm sitting at, it would be from west to northeast. It was blowing from west to northeast. Nobody could go outside. We're talking about some thick stuff. Thick stuff. Thick stuff. It caused a darkness and a claustrophobic feeling that the strongest person would do well to deal with. That's what it caused. Here's the thing, though. I saw that so many different times. I remember everything. I even remember talking to somebody about COT about it, and then all of a sudden I end up in a place that is that place, which scared me to pieces. It did scare me. It made my stomach drop, because every time something like that happens, it's a marker. My stomach drops. What does it represent? Now, to me, right, because I'll go ahead and tell you, I'm a bit stubborn. So to me, it represents maybe a marker, right? Because I never really look for the events to come to pass, because honestly, I don't like to look at those events coming to pass, but It was a marker. It was a mark, certainly a marker. There have been so many different markers over the years that were very close to something. But things have been happening for a long time now. And the reason why most people cannot see it, if you could condense all of what's happened in the last 50 years into a week, not one soul would believe things are normal. But they've happened over a duration of time, like the evacuation. Well, that is getting close to that. Okay, one more example. On the East Coast, people with white uniforms, with chemical sniffers, were all over the East Coast right after our rodent migration. And they were sniffing out things, and then they ordered evacuations from the East Coast. Now, back then, right, I didn't know too much. Since then, there's some things in the mountains, of the Appalachian Mountains, right, that can absolutely cause an evacuation if anything goes wrong. As of late, the environment is as such that things are being disregarded. Very close. That's why I don't think it's strange these things we're going through. They're not a surprise. And then when you know it, having that dream 24 times, the Lord stuck me in a career path that would expose me to even further things. So I'm not one of those who will sit and say everything is impossible, nor am I naive to believe that certain things cannot happen. I'm very cautious about people's futures, though, because we're sitting in the middle of something that's not going to go away. It just won't. It won't. Anyway, these troubled times that we live in right now are not trouble compared to what they will become very fast. And it's on track to becoming that way. It really is on track.